With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are here and the much anticipated wait for the Oscars, the 97th Academy Awards, has come to an end as the particular ceremony has already begun. Let me, in fact, get right into all that has been happening so far. Many of the awards have already been announced. In fact, in the latest one, we hear that Dune Part 2 wins the Oscar for the best visual effects, and that is the latest that we bring to you here. But, well, let's take you through all that's been happening so far in order. Rolling out the red carpet, the 97th Academy Awards are here, and the best of the cineworld is shining brighter than ever before. From the iconic Dolby Theatres in Los Angeles, the world watches as cinema's biggest stars gather for a night of glitz, glamour and glory. Despite the challenges of devastating wildfires, the show must go on, and it's going to be unforgettable as it already has been. Tonight, in fact, they have been celebrating the magic of movies, power of storytelling and the resilience of the human spirit. Let's dive right into the excitement of the Oscars 2025. Now, before we get into the very awards that have so far been announced, let's also take you through the popular comedian and late-night talk show host Conan O'Brien, who has made his highly anticipated debut as the host of this year's Oscars. Let us, in fact, take you through what has been said by him right ahead of the event.
Cannot ignore the moment we're in, but I also have to remember it's threading a needle. I also have to remember what we're here to celebrate and infuse the show with positivity and also shine a light on all these people who've worked incredibly hard, not just A-list celebrities, but people that you never see, craftsmen, craftspeople that work incredibly hard and have spent years making these films. And so I want to make sure that we address where we are in this moment on March 2nd at this time, but I do it with humor, and that I also make sure that the night doesn't drift into only about that, or because I think that's robbing people of something beautiful, hard work that they've done. And so it's a difficult line to walk, but I'm determined to figure it out. And in terms of what I might be doing, I can't say that either, because the whole trick here in this business is to get people to watch, to see what's going to happen. See, this is a mistake I used to make. I used to tell people exactly what I was going to do long before I did it, and then no one tuned in. Then I learned, don't tell people what you're going to do. A magician taught me that. And so I can't tell you what I'm going to do, other than that I am going to be in the best physical shape of my life. And what the hell was that? That's not a joke, man.
With that, as we proceed with the very bulletin at this point, let me introduce you the panel that's joining me today in this very bulletin. Edward Sonnenblick, actor, and Lata Srinivasan, senior journalist and film critic. Edward, Lata, thank you so much for joining us at News 9. I welcome you both. Well, it's been an exciting night so far, and before we get into discussing the very obvious choices that have already been awarded, I think I'm going to start the discussion with my personal favorite, and I was looking forward to this very award, that is Dune Part 2 having won the best sound as well. I mean, the very introductory music to that movie, we all had goosebumps, and I think it's a very well-deserved award, wouldn't you say? Edward, coming to you first.
Absolutely. It's as a, dramatic embellishment to an already, hugely dramatic film. The sound and the effects, I think, totally are worth Oscars. And it's interesting to see now. I think it's tied for the lead with 2 Oscars, along with the other leaders. So it's shaping up to be an exciting night.
Absolutely, and I think it also sets the stage for the rest of the entire series that will be released. Lata, but coming to you, so far we've seen one of the biggest winners tonight so far seems to be Nora at this given point. We also see Wicked leading in several of the categories, and at this point the hopes are all pinned on who is going to be ahead and who is going to finally bag that best film and best director? What would you say so far? What are your bets on in terms of the movies that have been nominated?
Thanks, Shreya. I think, the Oscars this time has been really diverse, and that's exciting for the nominees as well for the industry itself. As far as the winners, you can see, right from Wicked to Conclave to Emilio Perez and Honora, there've also been different kind of films that have been nominated, and that's also very exciting for the audience who have watched these films, and many of these films have turned out billions of dollars at the box office. So as far as the favorites go, Best Picture, I think it's really between Honora and Emilia Perez at this point. That's what I believe personally, because they've had a strong support as far as the Oscar jury goes, and that those are the films I'm rooting for at this point.
At this point, when we speak of Emilia Perez, I think one of the most interesting things about the movie is the very genre that it falls in. It is a crime musical, and one doesn't hear of a crime musical very often. Those almost, if one were to put it this way, it almost sounds like an oxymoron at this given point, because when we speak of a musical, we usually speak of, light-hearted, maybe if not a comedy completely, maybe a light-hearted drama of sorts. But a crime musical is quite a first, wouldn't you say, Edward?
Not coming from India, I would say. I think, yeah, for Hollywood, these kind of things are new, breaking ground. But we've been having musicals in every genre since film started in India, and I think that's one of the great contributions of Indian cinema to the world, is to mix things up like that. Even hard-hitting drama directors will in India will, from Ram Gopal Varma to Anurag Kashyap and Vishal Bardwaj. These are heavy-hitting drama directors that incorporate music. So yeah, it's great to see that happening now in Hollywood and getting Oscar nominations for it.
Absolutely. I'm going to quickly bring in an update for all our viewers at this given point. Maybe not on the most exciting note at this given point, given that we all had our hopes spinning on Anuja. But if we speak of the very category that is the best live action short film, it's been won by I'm Not a Robot, and Anuja unfortunately seems to not have made the mark at this given point. In fact, Lata, Edward, I would want to come to you with regards to this very point at this bulletin. That is, when we speak of Indian cinema, and Edward, as you very rightly mentioned, that musicals isn't new for Indian cinema, and yet even in the year 2025, when we look at the Academy Awards, the diverse representation that is now, being seen in the Academy Awards, there is a big, there is that glaring factor missing. That is the Indian representation, I would say. And we'd seen the excitement and the buzz with regards to Lapata Ladies when it was initially in the race for the Oscars, but somehow that didn't end up making the mark. And now we see that Anuja, though it's not directed by an Indian, we had seen Guneet Monga, Priyanka Chopra, Mindy Kaling, all of them rooting for this very movie. They were the producers of this movie. So this particular, this absence of Indian representation at a platform which has now actually come out to be inclusive, come out to diversify its very choice in terms of what movies they're selecting, why would you say that we're still absent in these platforms, unfortunately? Lata?
Shreya, I agree with you in that there is a serious lack of representation as far as Indian film, content is concerned, whether, especially the mainstream. But I think our sensibilities are very, very different than what, Hollywood and the kind of films they nominate. They're vastly different. So our mainstream content will definitely not make the cut as far as Hollywood goes, because like I said, firstly, the sensibilities are very different. And like Edward mentioned, we do a lot of musicals per se. And it's very commercial, it's very massy, which may not be appealing to people around the world. RRR, for instance, Rajamouli and team, they did a lot of lobbying and spending money in Hollywood, making sure that everyone on the jury watched the film. And that is the kind of bandwidth and money power you need for every single movie that goes from India to the Oscars. You need to ensure that you lobby for your film and that everyone on the jury sees the film, right? And not everybody has that. Not every filmmaker in India will have that kind of capacity. So I think that's also another important factor that we need to consider. But we've had a few wins as far as documentaries go, and you're aware of that, right? In the last couple of years, which I think gives us hope. So I think where our mainstream content is concerned, it's going to really take some time.
Absolutely. Edward, I would want to bring you in this particular part of the conversation as well. What would you have to say is at this given point missing in terms of the content that we create? Like Lata has very rightly mentioned, the kind of content that the mainstream content that we see in Indian cinema, it's quite different from what exactly is the criteria for Oscars, one would say. But in terms of international categories, in terms of short films, we have still seen India being considered. So at this point, if India does want to be represented at a platform like the Academy Awards, do you think there needs to be a change in the kind of perspective, in the kind of content that is being pushed out there? One needs to shift from the mainstream, or at least there should be a parallel stream of content that's also pushed out there alongside the mainstream content that goes out?
Yeah, I believe that things would need to continue changing as they have started to gradually. Whether I would use the word needs to change or not, I'm not sure, because getting Oscar recognition is just one measure of success in the world of cinema, and India, by many measures, is as successful as any cinematic industry can be globally, with more consumers out there than Hollywood, maybe even. I think if you look at the numbers, so it's all about the perspective and what the criteria are for judging what's important in a film. And as we've already been talking about, getting Oscar recognition is about much more than the film itself. It's about the whole PR machine that needs to go into action around it, and that requires so much resources that I think it's only going to be the occasional Indian film that has that kind of backing financially to really do that and make an impact. Now, there can always be the one-offs that make it through, but I think for now, I'm not surprised that we keep seeing the documentaries, the really thoughtful, well-made documentaries, getting recognized with nominations and even trophies.
Edward, in fact, at this point, why don't you also help us with, I remember, and this I'm quoting you yourself from an interview you had given, I remember during 2023, when RRR was in the race for Best Original Song, and you had said that we all were aware that, this was going in for the Oscars at that point, as well as there was a great buzz around that very music, not just the music, but also the very movie. And what would you say then at this given point in 2025, 2 years later? Definitely, you both have made very pertinent points with regards to how short films are doing very well in terms of Indian representation on these very platforms. But we've come 2 years down. RRR, the buzz that it had created was amazing, and it was above and beyond anything we could have imagined at this point. But what would you say at this point Indian cinema needs in terms of having their representation on platforms like this? What would you say? I wouldn't call it an equation, but what would you say is that one element that's missing at this point? Because RRR was also a commercial film at the end of the day.
Exactly, and RRR received so much love while being a quintessentially Indian movie in every sense, in its sensibilities and its presentation. So it was, I think surprising to a lot of us that Triple R was, able to make such an impact, not just for the song that won the Oscar, obviously, but the whole movie itself was so loved. And honestly, I don't have an answer that what made the world, stand up and notice Triple R, as opposed to other movies out there that you could argue are just as amazing. So it's a whole
They had
discussion
cracked a
that's a
code
little
which
bit of a
still
mystery to
remains
me.
to be a secret, Edward, at this point, it seems like.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll take one
Yeah,
last short response from Lata. I'm extremely sorry, Edward, for cutting you in between, but we're running a little short on time at this point. Lata, speaking of the best movie, you've spoken about how you have, at least at this point, placed your bets on Anora at this point. But, Anora, if we speak of the movie again, it's a romantic comedy. If we look at the previous years and the movies which have bagged the Best Picture Oscars, if we speak about Everything All at Once or even Oppenheimer for that matter, very different genre. And this time, that's what I think you placed that point at the very beginning, that it's a diverse list of movies that have been seen in the nominations at Oscars 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, the Oscars have also faced a lot of backlash over the years, as we know, the kind of nominees and how there was a lack of representation. So I think what, they're trying to do is be more inclusive. And I think it's in this that we see movies like, The Brutalist, Conclave, Emilia Perez, and Anora. They're all very, very different kind of films, and it's great to see such diverse films on the platform. But you also have to note that they have fantastic performances and fabulous screenplays. I think those are two very important criteria. Also, it's not just about the genre, but about the screenplay and the performances. And I think this year, all these films tick the right boxes. And so the competition this year is much tougher. It's very difficult to figure out which will, walk away with the most number of Oscars and so on and so forth. Because in the previous years, it was very clear as to which film will get the maximum number of Oscars. But this year, it's like all up in the air till now. And I think that's great for the film industry itself.
I think at this point, definitely it's been a very interesting race with a lot of unusual choices for an Oscars awards night. But definitely, I think it is evolving with time, and we're seeing diverse representations at this very platform. Edward, Lata, thank you so much for joining us at News9. And definitely, we are still looking at some of the major categories that are to be announced tonight itself: Best Actor, Actress, Best Film, Best Director. But before that, let me quickly cut across to one more panel guest that we have at this given point, who's joining us on the phone line and this very bulletin. Sunil Sadarangani, award-winning producer. Mr. Sadarangani, thank you so much for speaking to us at News9. We're speaking on a rather interesting night at this given point, as the red carpet's been rolled out and some of the major announcements of awards have already taken place. Best Screenplay, one of the top 5 awards that we look forward to on this very night, has already been announced, and it goes to Anora. And we were discussing before this as well some of the unusual and diverse choices and representations in this very 97th Academy Award has indeed ended up making it extremely historic, wouldn't you say?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry I can't get on the video because I'm not allowed to. Over here, I'm in the press room at the Oscars. But yes, to answer your question, I heard what you had just mentioned in your statement earlier just now, that it is interestingly and very well balanced in terms of the wins, and in terms of also the diverse representation as well. Also very hard to predict who is going to win. So yes, absolutely on point about that.
Absolutely. And you know, when we speak of unusual choices, as we were mentioning before, I think out of all the movies that we see, Emilia Perez and Anora at this given point would top the list of unusual choices in terms of genre, or even in terms of the kind of stories that have been chosen for these categories. Like Anora being a romantic comedy, I don't remember the last time we would have thought of a romantic comedy up for grabs for the best picture, and in fact people pinning their hopes on that movie as well, that it might actually end up winning best picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Anora, as well as, Wicked and Emilia Perez. I think they are all three, very different, but still not in the usual, realm of Oscar choices, for sure.
Absolutely. And what would you have to say? In fact, before I get into the discussion, let me hear from you. Who are your hopes pinned on for the big 5 awards? One of them has already been declared, of course, Anora. But other than that, the other 4 categories, who are you pinning your hopes on?
Well, it's pretty difficult, but in terms of actress, I feel that I would really like Demi Moore to win, because she has been just she's legacy, and she's been there, and she did a fantastic job, and what a comeback. So I would really, not to undermine the other nominees, but I would love to see her win. And then in terms of best picture, I think Anora definitely has a huge chance because of the wins tonight. But I think that The Brutalist and is pretty much a film that really came from like, it definitely was an underdog. So I feel that may have a good chance, but you just never know. As we said earlier, it's hard to predict this Oscars. It's such a, like a, there's this like a chessboard in that sense.